All right. So your cheat sheet. This is labeled cheat sheet number 1. I don't know how many there will be. It could be like World War I, and it might have just been the Great Presidency cheat sheet until the second one comes along. But this one is about the cabinet and the executive office of the president. And a lot of this is not going to seem like exciting stuff. And you may be thinking, none of this has ever been exciting stuff. Well, then this will just be more boring than baseline. But this is also important stuff. Some of it's easy to mix up unless we know a little bit more about it. So first thing, we're starting on the cabinet departments. We need to note that these are created by Congress. They cannot be abolished without Congress's approval. Yeah, Eddie.
So this is meant to be like, this is like just the ones that exist right now. This is not like the ones that used to exist, right?
Right. Yeah, there is no War Department on here. Although it does reference that there used to be a Department of War and a Department of the Navy, and now there's just Defense.
Education.
Well, so because for now it still exists. So, I mean, and this is one of like the caveats. So far as we know, I mean, departments are created by Congress through legislation, okay, that then becomes law, and the department comes into existence because either the president would sign it, or if for some reason the president didn't want that department to exist, Congress could override that veto and create the department anyway. Because departments are created by legislation, once that department exists, the president cannot abolish it without approval of Congress. That's the current understanding. The Supreme Court has made lots of rulings in recent years that lots of people expected would never be made, or at least wouldn't be made the way the decisions actually came down. So this might change, but for now, this is the world as we know it. The other thing we need to understand, this will help us distinguish this from the executive office of the president. The cabinet departments run the federal government day to day. They make decisions big and small to run the federal government on a day-to-day basis. So, I mean, notice what it says. The State Department makes foreign policy. The Treasury acts as the banker to the government. They bring the money in, they pay the money out. They're not asking for the president to sign all of the checks that the federal government writes. Do you need to know all of these departments? Technically, yes. I am not a huge fan of writing questions that require you to memorize things like this that are easy to look up and not that essential to remember on their own. That doesn't mean somebody else isn't going to write a question that you will see that does require you to determine, is this a real cabinet department or is it not? Right, is it a part of the cabinet or is it one of those executive offices of the president? Can I name all of them off the top of my head all the time? No. On a good day, I might. But you would have to remind me how many there are so I could count up and get there. Some of them are easier to know than others because some of them are in the news quite a bit. The Department of State, often in the news. Department of Defense, in the news all the time. And Justice Department, frequently in the news. Others are not always in the news. Health and Human Services, in the news a lot. When Obamacare was being formulated and first implemented. And remember, even one of our Supreme Court cases was against Sebelius when she was the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services, of course, has recently been in the news because of the appointment of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the Secretary of HHS. What's the other one that has been in the news a lot lately? A lot lately. Yes, Asaf is right. Education. All right, Luma is not in a mood to let me move that today, so let's. I need you to move, Loom. This makes for great recording stuff, by the way. Fills lots of time. There we go. Now you'll move. Okay, that may be good enough. All right, so for now, and who knows, next year, students may not have any need to circle the Department of Education. I hope if they do, they have done a better job than I just did. Now, the reason we're actually going to take time to talk about it is because, for those of you taking the AP exam, this being my first year, I don't know how late in the game they are adding questions, changing questions for the exam. But if I were contemplating putting an essay question together, and I might be, this would be an excellent topic for an essay question. So what do you need to know? Or at least what do I think you would need to know about this? Particularly in terms of its current state. I mean, you should always know that it's obviously the department that deals with federal education policy. My guess is you could just figure that out just by the name of the department. So first, what is President Trump's goal regarding DOE? That's the Missouri version. Yeah, Missouri is DESE. What is his goal? What does he want to do to it? Yeah. Thanks, Christian. Well, I mean, a lot of times there has been Republican opposition to the Department of Education's creation. For a lot, and it usually is Republicans. It's not always Republicans that are opposed to things the Department of Education does. For example, I mean, there are black activist groups that don't like a lot of federal education policy, or state education policy for that matter, because they would like much more school choice, because their kids are much more likely to go to horrible public schools than like affluent suburban white kids. So there's opposition from different quarters, but reliably, Republicans have not liked a lot of what comes out of the Department of Education. They want to basically, I mean, in those cases, they want to turn it back to the states. But even that's messy, because I mean, George W. Bush was, I mean, he's the No Child Left Behind guy, and that was run through the Department of Education. So it's not always consistent. But for Trump specifically, we do know he wants to get rid of it and turn education back over to the states. Right. Can President Trump abolish the DOE? Yeah, so far, no. I'm definitely in a hedging my bets kind of mood. That's why we're going to put the so far on there. And with all of these things, don't try to read my politics into it. That is, I know coming from some teachers, that's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. This is exactly what you should be trying to do as I'm talking about this. But no, don't. My thoughts on it are irrelevant, and they're also messy. It's not worth trying to figure them out. So if President Trump cannot abolish the Department of Education on his own, what can he do? What other things can he do to achieve his goals? Okay, so yes, and with a caveat. So first, let's put the question up there. And I am no double letter there, double letter where it should be. It's third time's a charm. There we go. So let's take a step back from that first. What would he do to change funding in the DOE? What would be his mechanism for doing that? Yeah. So executive order. Okay. And an example of that could be to change how funding is used. The reason I say we have to have a caveat, if we just say to cut funding, presidents can't cut funding because Congress appropriates the funding. And if the president signs off on the budget resolution, then that budget becomes law. And I mean, so he can't just say, I'm spending no money on you. Nixon tried that, and he butted heads with Congress, and it didn't work. Presidents have some wiggle room to change how funding is used. What else? So we'll hold off that one till last. That one makes the list. Other classes have struggled with this one. It's kind of the thing that's hiding in plain sight, but for that reason, I mean, it's still hiding. What is the first thing when a new president comes in that they would do that could really set the direction of the DOE? Well, you have to do that. But yes, who they appoint. And the example to use, because I mean, it's easy to think. Remember, I mean, so the secretary just does what the president wants, right? So I mean, why does it matter who this person is? Well, it does matter because there are lots of cabinet departments. Presidents have a hard time watching them. I mean, look what happened with the cuts to USAID and Marco Rubio kind of taking his own initiative and then doing something that Trump didn't want him to do. So having a secretary that knows what you want and agrees with it can make a difference. And the analogy I used for this when another hour was struggling getting there is we have a pep assembly on Friday, right? That is correct, right? We do. Okay. If they're choosing which teacher is going to organize the pep assembly, right? And the choice is a boring, no fun teacher, who is me, and then who's a fun teacher? Who's a different teacher that is fun? Okay, Mrs. Carter. Classes have been so hesitant, like they're going to hurt my feelings. Like I already identified myself as the boring, no fun teacher. Like you guys have the easy one, just somebody who is fun. Okay, so Mrs. Carter, that sounds like a fun choice. And so Do you think you would get different pep assemblies depending on which of those teachers is organizing them? Yeah, because I would do my best to make sure that it was quiet. Because it's very noisy in there. And I'm very old and I like my quiet, so I usually stand out far away from them and make sure kids aren't trying to leave the building. So you would get different outcomes. So appointing who is going to run the thing day to day matters. Okay, and then and here to be specific, in the case of the Trump administration, fire staff. And I'm not picking on Trump, and we need to be careful with what we're talking about. Presidents typically, nearly universally, come into office and essentially fire all of the people who are running those departments, because they're all, the secretaries, the top level people are all appointed. And presidents usually want to appoint their own people. It's rare for one to carry over. William Cohen, as Secretary of Defense, carried over from a Republican to a Democrat administration, and that was very rare. I can't remember if it was from Bush 1 to Clinton or from Clinton to Bush 2. I don't remember, but that's rare. What is less common is large-scale layoffs of people who are not appointees. Somebody like a Blake, who would apply for a job based on his college degree and be hired in that job by some other management person. Blake may not know who the president is, and the president may have no idea who Blake is. And those aren't the kind of people who typically get fired when an administration changes. So what's happening with Doge is really unusual. However you feel about it, it's not a common thing. And my guess is if you feel good about it, part of the reason you feel good about it is you're like, man, this is finally happening and I never thought it would. Okay, so that's kind of a third thing. The two big ones to remember in general would be executive orders and appointments. Because those are the powers that all presidents use to shape what a department does. Now to the executive office of the president. Okay, yeah, I know the copier kind of messed that up. I'm going to pretend I did it on purpose because it makes you be a little more cognizant of when you're flipping and which one you're looking at. So we'll just pretend that it was designed that way. All right. To help distinguish the cabinet departments from the executive office, the thing to really understand is these are more advisory rather than administrative. These are not running the government on a day-to-day basis. Now, we do need a little bit of hierarchy to this that kind of washed out in the copier. Obviously, everything answers to the president. Yeah, never start drawing until I've stopped. You don't know what's going to happen. There we go. Now, beyond that, it's not like the rest of these are any kind of hierarchy. Yeah, beyond that, they become just basically a box of chocolates, right? Each one has its own flavor and does its own thing. It doesn't touch the others. Now, in the White House office, we have the most important person here is the chief of staff. Yes. Everyone's a critic. There we go. Yes, it was supposed to be. I know, you're thinking a guy as boring and pedantic as Dr. Brown has to do something, everything's for a reason. You give me too much credit, Lily, too much credit. So the chief of staff, this is whoever the president wants it to be. They're kind of like a fixer. The president tells them what they want. The chief of staff figures out who they need to talk to and kind of cajole, corral, persuade, whatever to get what the president wants, and that's what happens if the chief of staff has done their job well. Okay. Within this, there are three things that we care about. And this is, the executive office is messy and annoying. These are not all called departments. The leaders of these different parts have different titles. Let's start with the ones that are most important in general. Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, the Council of Economic Advisors. They're the world's worst asterisks. That one is actually an Iroquois longhouse with a tendril of smoke climbing through it. Come on, guys. Use your art eyes. I'll try and do better with this one. So far, so good. Do I stick the landing? Yes, there. Is that okay? That one's squiggly a little bit. It's an improvement. That one just looks like a character in the part of the Japanese alphabet they cribbed from the Chinese. So you get what you get, guys. I'm a public employee after all. Okay, so these three are in general the most important. Does that mean they are, like, the others are never really in the public's eye? No, right now, the Office of the United States Trade Representative is very much in the spotlight because of tariff policy. Further complication is that some of these people require confirmation and some of them don't. I actually don't know which, this may not be all of them. I have tried to look, and you either find sources that will list nothing or sources that tell you, yeah, there's 12 to 1,400 positions that require confirmation. I'm not listing all of those.
What does that say?
Requires confirmation. This is, again, me trying to be paternalistic and require you, force you to use shorthand. And just to make sure we're remembering all the things we need to, which part of the government confirms presidential appointments? The Senate. Yes, and only the Senate, right? Not Congress, not the legislative branch, but specifically the Senate within Congress. So the director of the OMB requires confirmation, and so does the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. Like I said, it's annoying. We've got a director of one, a chair of another, and then this person is the National Security Advisor. And they don't require confirmation. Go ahead, Haley. Both of those two do. This one, and only write this down if you were on Central's Quiz Bowl team or you just like trivial knowledge in case you ever make Jeopardy. The National Security Advisor does not require confirmation unless they are a 3- or 4-star general and they would like to keep their rank while serving as National Security Advisor. What's that? Yeah, that's definitely, well, except if I predict it won't be on the AP exam, some sadistic nerd will put it there. Okay. Yes. Oh, what a... There we go.